Morning, Kate here, bringing you this week's Monday Mission. And this one was actually a special request about habit change and specifically developing new habits. And I can do another one about breaking habits that have already been established. But for this one, we're going to focus on establishing new habits. And what's so awesome about today's video is I'm really going to teach you a lot about the brain and why we create habits, why sometimes it's so hard to continue with those habits, even though we know they're good for us, and what we can do differently to sort of increase our chances of that habit sticking. So those are the things I'm going to focus on today. I'm going to, as always, give you some examples, and I have a worksheet with this one. So hopefully, if you're watching this on the IGTV that I'll post later, hopefully you actually are an email subscriber as well, so you can get the worksheet that I'll reference in the video. All right, so that's our plan. So let's get into it. Habits, it has been said that habits are the number one determiner of a good quality of life. So that is the level of importance that is put on the habits that we choose to do daily and how they bring us success and different things in our life. So habits are literally wired into our brain. So if you remember in some other videos how I've talked about those sled riding hills, right? So let's say that it's like the first big snow of the winter and you go out and there's fresh snow and you want to go sled riding down the hill. Well, the first time that you go, it's going to be kind of slow and maybe not very smooth, right? But the second time and the third time, and the more you keep going down that sledding hill, it becomes packed down and it gets super fast and efficient. And that's what happens in our brain. So when we do something, when we do a behavior repeatedly, it creates that sledding hill, which we call a neural pathway. And that's what habits essentially are. So it's actually said that 40 to 45% of our behavior really are made up of habits, habits that we have created throughout our entire life. So this is how efficient our brains are, right? So think about it. How many times have you driven to work in the morning and you pull into the parking lot and you're kind of like, how how did I get here? Was I driving? Like what happened on the way into work? Or I've done this so many times where I'm going a certain direction, or I'm going like the direction to work, but I'm actually going somewhere else. I'll make the turn as if I'm going to work because it is such a habit. It is so ingrained that sledding hill for driving to work is so efficient. If you think about it, this is amazing though that our brain does this. So that's what our brain wants to do. It wants to make things as efficient as possible. The problem is that if we have created negative habits or habits that don't serve us, it's very easy to go back into those habits and it's harder to break those because they're sledding hills as well. And the brain really cannot tell the difference between a habit that's good for you and a habit that's bad for you. All right, so remember what else we've talked about with the brain is that the whole purpose of our brain is to keep us safe. And to the brain, anything that feels comfortable is safe. Okay, so if you think about it, a habit that you've done over and over and over again, even though it may be bad for you, is considered safe by your brain because the definition of safe in the brain is just something that we have done over and over again and made efficient. I don't have to expend all of this energy. We've done this before and we haven't died. We've survived. So it maintains that as a habit, which makes it harder and harder to break. But do you know what this means? This means you are not a weak person. You don't have, low willpower, right? But that's what we do. We beat ourselves up for this and we, shame ourselves into, thinking that we're these horrible people with no willpower and we're so weak because we can't create these new habits. So I found it very beneficial to think about it more from the brain aspect than the willpower aspect and recognizing, okay, this is how my brain works. This neural pathway that I've created is going to be very strong, but I can change it. I can create a new pathway, but it's going to be hard. I'm going to mess up. It's going to be really easy to go back into the old pathway, but it is possible. And that helps me so much to create certain habits. So I wanted to talk about the habit loop. Okay, so we know a little bit about our brain. Now we want to recognize what the habit loop is. How do we establish a habit? So I have it written out for you here so we can look. This is the loop of a habit. So it starts with a cue. You engage in a routine. Because you did that routine, you get a reward. And then you go back and you see the cue again. You are more inclined to do the routine because you got the reward, and so on and so on and so on. And so that's our loop. Okay. So for instance, um, I now get up, I would say at least six days a week, 5 to 6 days a week, and I get up between 5:30 and 6, and I work out every single morning. So that's a habit that I've created, right? So the cue is my alarm clock. The routine is that I immediately, like I go to the bathroom, I get my workout clothes on, I do my workout, and I get the endorphins, I get the energy, I get all of those rewards that come with moving your body, so that the next time my clock goes off, I'm more inclined to do that, right? But in the beginning, it was really, really difficult to start creating that neural pathway. So the cue was there, my alarm clock would go off, but I didn't realize what this was yet. This had not kicked in for me yet. So when that alarm clock went off, I wanted to turn it off. I was mad. I was, frustrated. I didn't want to do it. I wanted to go back into the old habit of sleeping in and pressing snooze. So it took pushing past that repeatedly to create this loop that I now have, gosh, 6 years later, that I do it every day. It has become a part of me. Okay, so that's our loop. And that's what I wanted to sort of explain as well, is that the reward, the thing that reinforces you, that increases the chances of you engaging in that habit again, it needs to be tied to a value. It needs to be really, really important for you. Okay. So when I started, the reason I had never uh, developed the habit of working out first thing in the morning prior to when I finally did establish the habit was because this wasn't there for me. What I had tried to start doing it out of was fear or shame because I hated my body and I hated how I looked, and I knew that working out is something that could change my body. So this was coming from fear, judgment, shame, and I couldn't get the habit to stick, right? Because that's not a reward. That's coming from, a negative place. When I eventually was able to get into the routine, knowing that this would give me the energy to run around with my kids, just feeling better about myself, not being so groggy, not having brain fog, having energy throughout my day. When I started to associate it with those kinds of rewards, then the habit stuck because the loop was there and this truly was a reward. It wasn't coming from a place of punishment. If I could just, punish my body into looking better, right? So that increased the chance of that becoming a habit for me. So if you can tie it to your values, and come from a place of your values in the future self, the person that you want to be in the future, that is really going to strengthen your habits. So another example of this is I used to drink gallons of Diet Pepsi, like gallons, and knew it wasn't great for me, right? I had tons of headaches. I don't know that I associated them with um, drinking that back then, but I knew it wasn't good for me, right? I mean, it's basically caramel colored chemicals, right? And I knew it was a habit that I wanted to break, but I just could never create this loop for it. Okay. Got pregnant with my first child, knew that I did not want to put that in my body while I was pregnant, stopped a cold turkey because my reward for engaging in that routine of, not drinking the Diet Pepsi or replacing it with something different, the reward was now tied to my value, which was not, or limiting processed food while I was pregnant. Okay. So it's the same reason that someone that is, over drinking is able to all of a sudden stop drinking. The reward maybe is eventually tied to a value, something that they see themselves in the future wanting to be that person that doesn't pick up that drink or doesn't go for that drink or overeating or whatever it is. You finally find the reward that creates the loop for you. Okay, so in order to kind of find out what that value is, I want you to do an exercise where you look at that future self. You look at the person that you want to be in the future when you have this habit. So I created the attached worksheet for you to go through and do that. So you can see the first box is the habit that I want to create. What does the future me um, value about this habit, sorry, which is the future me value about this habit. And then you're going to create your own loop. So you have your routine, or I'm sorry, you have the cue, your routine, your reward, and then you're going to write in what your habit loop is. Okay. So let's give an example. Let's just go with the working out in the morning. Okay. So that's the habit that you want to create. I want to get up and work out first thing in the morning. What does the future me value about this? Again, if I put in here, um, it's just that's what I know that other people do. Other people that have the bodies that I want get up in the morning and work out. So that's why I'm going to do it. That's not tied to your value. So you may be able to do it for a little while, but in order to really get into a loop that makes that habit part of who you are, it becomes your identity, probably not going to work. So if you would change this to your true value, I want to have energy to run around with my kids. I want to feel confident and good in my clothes and feel sexier for my partner. I want to change my health. I want to get off my medication that I'm on. I want to be able to actually enjoy and be active, you know, when I retire. Whatever it is that's tied to that value, that future self, that who you really want to be, that's what's going to help you create the habit loop. Okay. So if that was my example, then my cue would be my alarm clock goes off, and routine would be that you immediately put your workout clothes on and go downstairs. You feel the reward of the energy and the endorphins and feeling good that you did something good for yourself that day, but that's not going to be there right away, right? So, what you want to do in this point is you want to almost put your value there as well. I'm going to have energy to play with my kids, okay? And think about it in the future because it's going to be really difficult right in the beginning. But if you can tie to that motivating factor, if you can tie to that value, you're going to increase the chance that this loop will stick for you. Okay. And then even in the routine, you can set yourself up with different ways of you have your workout clothes, or sometimes you sleep in your workout clothes so that you can't make those excuses. You have them right away to do that. But the biggest thing that's going to help you keep that loop is tying it to a value of the future person that you want to be. So let's say, I want a clean house, or I like a clean house and I want to get in the habit of cleaning my house more often. That's not really a value for you. It just, I should want to have a clean house. Other people do. It's not going to stick for you. You may be able to get into it for, maybe a few days, maybe even a couple of weeks, but the fact, or, the loop sticking for you is probably not going to be there because it's just not tied to who you truly want to be and value, right? The other way that you're going to get that loop to stick is planning ahead for what you're going to do when you don't engage in the habit. Okay. So the first time that the alarm went off and I just could not get myself to work out, what am I going to do at that point? Am I going to just throw it all out the window because of this one time? No, I'm going to think, okay, my brain is trying to get me to go back into that old pathway that's already established. It's trying to get me to be efficient. And I need to just either accept this as a misstep and start back tomorrow, or I need to push myself through this morning and do the habit, do the routine. But you want to have a plan for what you're going to do if you have a misstep, because it is going to happen. It's not because you're weak. It's not because you don't have any willpower. It's just because of your brain, and that's how it works, right? So if you can think of that, it will help you plan for when you have sort of that mess up, because we all do, and you're going to have that. So it's best to plan for it. Okay. I also want you to think about being realistic when you set the habit that you want to create. Okay. So if you don't work out at all right now, having the habit be, I'm going to work out 6 days a week at 5 in the morning, probably not realistic, right? So when I started out doing it, I told myself it was going to be 3 days a week and it was going to be for 15 minutes. And I had a little routine that I found. I did like a couple of burpees, I did a wall sit, I did some push ups, and I think some sit ups. And I just did 15 minutes of it worth 15 minutes. When 15 minutes was up, I was done. And then I eventually got to the point where I'm doing it this often and longer workouts. But I didn't start out that way. So you want to make sure that your habit is really realistic to start. Okay. So those are my best tips for you, recognizing that it's your brain. It's not because you're weak and because you have no willpower. tying your reward and your habit to a value, something that you envision your future self and why you want that to be part of your future, and being realistic with your habit, and what having a plan in place for when you don't do it or something happens in life that makes you go back to the old habit, right? Pressing snooze. What are you going to do when that happens? You're going to give yourself grace and recognize that it's just your brain and maybe give yourself a couple days to get back, or are you going to throw it all out the window and just say, oh, I have no willpower. It's me. I'm never going to be able to do this habit. Okay. You should think about all those things. That's your mission. Should you choose to accept it, is do the habit worksheet, pick one, make sure it's realistic, write it down on paper, tie it to a value, and then, as always, let me know what habit you chose, what value you're tying it to, and then please reach out. Let me know how it goes. Whatever you're deciding that you want to make a habit, give me periodic updates so I can see how you're doing. All right, that is the mission. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.